My kids suddenly want to talk to me years after they chose their mom and stepdad over me. I told them to stay where they are. Then they told me why they came back, and I realized I had never heard the full story. Hello, Reddit I. Plus, here. I'm a 57-year-old man, and I never thought I'd have to ask strangers on the internet whether I'm wrong for refusing to let my adult children back into my life. Maybe I'm bitter. Maybe I'm stubborn. Or maybe there are some wounds that don't disappear just because the people who caused them eventually feel guilty. I was married to my ex-wife Renee for 16 years. We had two children, Dylan, who is now 25, and Sophie, who is 23. For most of my marriage, I honestly thought I had a normal family. Then one afternoon, my entire life exploded. I was supposed to be away for work. My flight had been canceled, so I came home earlier than expected. I walked into my house and found my wife in our bedroom with her coworker, Graham. I won't pretend I handled it well. I completely lost control. I attacked Graham so violently that he ended up hospitalized. Renee tried to intervene and got injured in the chaos. The police came, I was arrested, and within hours, the life I'd spent years building was basically gone. I lost my job. Renee filed for a protective order. My marriage was over. And because I was facing criminal charges and living temporarily with my older brother, Renee was given primary custody of the kids. I knew I'd made a terrible mistake by attacking Graham. I took responsibility for it. But what happened afterward broke me in ways I wasn't prepared for. Renee married Graham. Yes, the man I'd caught sleeping with my wife became my children's stepfather. At first, my kids still came to see me. They were young, confused, and angry. I tried to make every visit about them. I'd take them fishing. We'd watch movies. I'd cook their favorite meals. I bought birthday presents even when money was tight. But gradually, things changed. They started canceling visits. Then they stopped answering my calls. Then I learned Renee and Graham were taking them on expensive vacations and buying them things I couldn't afford. New phones, gaming consoles, designer clothes, cars when they got older. I couldn't compete financially, but I never thought I should have to. I was their father. I thought that would mean something. Apparently, it didn't. One evening, Dylan told me he didn't want to come over anymore. When I asked why, he said, "Mom's family is my real family now." I don't think I've ever forgotten those words. Sophie eventually said something similar. Then came the conversation that completely destroyed me. They wanted Graham to adopt them. I refused. Not because I wanted to control them, I just couldn't understand how my own children could erase me while I was still alive. For a while, I fought it. Then my mother died. She had been the one person who never gave up on me. She helped me financially after my arrest. She let me stay with her when I had nowhere else to go. She defended me when everyone else thought I was a monster. And she adored my children. She kept pictures of them everywhere. When she died, I called Renee. I begged her to let Dylan and Sophie come to the funeral. They didn't. Neither of them showed up. Dylan was 18, Sophie was 16. I stood beside my mother's coffin and kept looking toward the entrance, hoping they'd walk through the doors. They never did. That was the moment something inside me finally died. A few weeks later, I contacted Renee. I told her I'd signed the adoption paperwork. I told her I wasn't going to keep fighting for children who had already decided they didn't want me. I signed away my parental rights. And that night, I made a decision. I would stop waiting for them. I would stop checking my phone. I would stop hoping. I would stop letting their rejection control my life. For the first time in years, I started rebuilding myself. I went back to school. I found a better career. I bought my own house. I started exercising. I made friends. I traveled. I eventually met someone who treated me with kindness. And slowly, I became happy again. 7 years passed. I didn't hear from my children once. Then, last month, I received a message. It was from Dylan. "Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but Sophie and I really need to talk to you. Please." I stared at the message for several minutes. Then I blocked him. Not because I was angry, because I didn't want to reopen a wound that had finally healed. The next day, Sophie messaged me, "Please, just give us one chance." Blocked. Then came the phone calls. Blocked. Then the emails. Ignored. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Last Saturday afternoon, someone knocked on my front door. When I opened it, Dylan and Sophie were standing on my porch. I hadn't seen either of them in 7 years. Dylan looked nervous. Sophie was crying. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. Then Dylan whispered, "Dad." I felt absolutely nothing. He said they wanted to apologize. Sophie said they had been lied to about a lot of things growing up. She said they had spent years believing I abandoned them. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. "Mom told us you didn't want us anymore." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. "I called you," I said. "I came to your school events. I asked to see you. I begged to stay in your lives." Sophie started crying harder. Dylan said, "We know." I asked, "When did you find out?" He looked down. "After we were adults. Apparently, they'd recently learned that their mother had told them a completely different version of the divorce. They'd been told I left. They'd been told I didn't care about them. They'd been told I chose another life over them. And according to them, Graham had spent years reinforcing that story. Then Dylan said the one thing I never expected to hear, for we were wrong. I looked at both of them, and I realized something. 7 years ago, I would have given anything to hear those words. Now, I didn't need them anymore. I told them I was sorry they had been lied to, but I also told them that their choices still belonged to them. They weren't 5 years old. They had been old enough to understand what they were doing when they cut me off. They didn't come to my mother's funeral. They rejected me. They asked another man to become their father, and then they disappeared for 7 years. I told them I had already mourned them. Sophie asked me if that meant I didn't love them anymore. I told her, I loved you for years when you didn't love me back. I'm not going to pretend those years didn't happen. Dylan started crying. He asked if we could at least start over. I told him I didn't know. Then I asked them to leave. They stood there for another minute, hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. Finally, they walked away. Since then, I've been getting calls from people telling me I'm cruel. An old family friend said I'm punishing my children for something they did when they were teenagers. Another person told me they are adults now and deserve a second chance. Even my neighbor said, they're your kids. How can you turn them away? But nobody seems to understand what I'm struggling with. They got 7 years to forget me. I got 7 years to learn how to live without them. Now that they're hurting, everyone expects me to immediately become their father again. But where were they when my mother died? Where were they when I was rebuilding my life? Where were they when I spent years wondering why my own children didn't want me? I don't know if I made the right decision. Part of me wants to hear their side. Part of me is terrified that opening that door will destroy the peace I've worked so hard to build. And maybe that's what makes this so complicated. I'm not asking whether I have the right to be angry. I know I do. I'm asking whether I should let that anger decide the rest of my life. So, Reddit, I plus audience. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my adult children back into my life after they abandoned me for 7 years? Should I hear them out? Or did I finally choose myself? And should I leave the past exactly where I buried it?